Well, here we are. It is Friday, October 18th, 2024, and this is the weekly video. Those of you that watch every week know that we go through some of the auctions that have taken place in the last week, talk about a few results, and take a look at what's upcoming in the Chinese and Asian art world, and touching on other antiques from time to time. I noticed something interesting, though, earlier this week, and you can go check it out for yourself. Over on Live Auctioneers, Brunks had their sale that was delayed due to that horrible hurricane that went through Asheville, North Carolina. I was very happy to hear that their gallery and their people, I guess, are okay. They were up on a hilltop and not affected by the storm. Their building wasn't affected, but the whole community, of course, was devastated. They're still in the throes of a cleanup. I guess they're having a lot of trouble getting assistance into the areas, especially the remote areas, and that's ongoing. Hopefully they'll get that fixed up. But Brunks did have their sale this last week of the postponed Americana sale, and there were some very good prices. And it's good to see. We noticed a few good prices from Americana and furniture and that sort of thing a few months ago and some other sales. And there seems to be some life in the old girl yet, as they say. There was a very nice William and Mary veneered chest that brought around a little over $200,000, which was a nice price to see. It was a well-known example. It had been published many times, but that was also an interesting result. And there was a constitutional document that went through the sale that brought over $1 million in their sale for just a few days ago. They had a very, very successful sale. So check it out, take a look, and see what you think. All right. The other thing I wanted to mention before we get into things, as many of you know, we did a video earlier this week about what's going on at Sotheby's and Christie's. And I noticed there were quite a few comments on the video, many of you agreeing with what my thoughts were. And I got a few emails from people and heard from a couple of people that had worked at the two companies that we talked about. And I just wanted to say, if any of you are employees or former employees that want to email me, please do. I'm curious to hear what's going on there. I was in touch with a couple of people this week that got a hold of me who are familiar with, in particular, the Hong Kong operations of the two companies. I had 3 people email me and sort of echoed the same sorts of stories of what's going on there, and it was kind of disturbing, to be honest. But if maybe it's not, if you work there, if you work at Hong Kong or you work for Sotheby's or Christie's, and you have something positive to say, or what's going on there, let me know. I don't want to make it all seem negative, but get in touch. The email address is here on Bitamount under Contact Us. And you can get a hold of us or through the plcombs.com site. The Contact Us page has our email on it, and that comes directly to me. It isn't shared with anybody else. And I just want to take a look and get a stronger sense of what's going on with these two companies, what the mindset is at present, because it's just the more I'm hearing, the stranger it's getting, frankly. So anyway, that's we'll just leave it there for now. All right. So, but if you have anything to share, let me know. All right, now over to some results this past week. As I mentioned last week or a week or two ago, Casco Bay had a couple of auctions coming up. They're up in Maine, they're in Freeport, up where all the LL Bean outlets are, right outside of that area. And they had a couple of sales with some Chinese things in them. And if you were paying attention and you bid on those sales, you got some good buys. I don't know what happened, but I think a lot of people forgot to leave a bid. And things like this very nice Chinese Amari 18th century export teapot from Eleanor Gordon, no less, sold for just $160. This was a beautiful pot, and it was in exceptionally good condition. Maybe it was in such good condition people were doubting its age. I don't know. But $160 for this pot was a really good buy. This was a very, very fine example. The gilding was all in perfect condition. It had a tiny frit here on the end of the spout, and I think that was it, which is pretty remarkable for a teapot. As you all know, teapots often have nicks and chips all over them because they were used so much. This was a very nice one, sold for just $160 against a $100 to $200 estimate. I don't know why they estimated it so low. Should have been estimated at $300 to $500, but that was it, and it went very reasonably. Maybe the estimate kept people from putting much money on it, and the same thing was true for this. This was a very rare Those of you who collect Chinese export wares and rare birds, this was a wedding tea caddy with the heart on it and so forth. The two winged cherubs. This is a very unusual tea caddy. This is highly unusual and a rare one. And it sold for just $200 with a silver cap added to it. It's a beautiful example. And again, pay attention. If you see a thing like this, it was estimated at $300 to $500, which I don't think is an unreasonable estimate. And had it gone for $6 or $7, I wouldn't have been terribly surprised because it's a rare one. It's an unusual one. But it went for just $200. And then some other examples here. This was a bargain. Those of you that have been collecting for a length of time are familiar with what's called the Three Friends of Winter pattern. And they're represented by the pine tree, the bamboo tree, and the plum blossom tree. Here they are. And it goes back to Confucius. There's a long story about the Three Friends of Winter. I won't go through the whole history, but the point was that usually this pattern gets a lot of attention and does very, very well in auctions if it's on porcelain. This was a Kangxi jar. And the only thing that ever happened to this jar was it had been drilled once as a table lamp. This was a very, very nice piece of porcelain. It was very pretty, very beautifully drawn, and it went for a song. It went for a bargain, just $350. And I have no idea why. It was a very good example. It had a hairline in it, which is not unusual, but still, $350 for Three Friends porcelain from the Kangxi period is a very, very smart thing to buy. And then over here, there were a few other lots. Another great thing that sold very reasonably was the jade Yixing teapot, a jade-handled Yixing teapot, I should say, clad in pewter. These are very rare, very collectible. It was bought from a Chinese dealer back in Hong Kong. Looked by the receipt that's included, but it looks like it was bought back in the 50s or the 60s. And maybe the Yixing liner to it was damaged. I don't know what happened here. If one of you got a condition report on it, let me know. Make a comment down below and tell me, why did this bring so little money? We've had these in the past. We've sold them. We've even sold them on eBay for $2,000 and $3,000 in the past. And sometimes more for these pewter examples. This one went for just $550 against a $500 to $700 estimate. So with the buyer's premium, it was around $650, $700, which is still a very, very reasonable buy for these. A very desirable type of teapot. And these were also a good buy. The Lac Bagat wine cups. Beautifully done, silver liners. They appeared to be in excellent condition, went for $100 a piece plus premium. You don't see that very often. That was also a very, very good buy, as were the undertrays. And these undertrays were fairly unusual, especially the one on the right that's done in a brown lacquer. Very, very finely worked. The black lacquer one on the left is very good too. But brown lacquer is a little bit rarer, a bit more unusual. And somebody bought the pair of these. They didn't pay $100 a piece, but they didn't pay a lot more. They paid about $175, $200 a piece for them. But still, an excellent buy. These were, again, under the money. We've said it a million times. If you see something you like, leave a bid on it. Just leave a bid. Just leave some money on the table and see what happens. And if you had done that, you might be the winner of these. All right, and then over to these. These sold for nothing, and they surprised me. These are a pair of Yixing wall sconces. They were 7 inches tall. These were pretty big, and they were done in the form of cicadas, or I don't care to tell if they're cicadas or bumblebees or bees, but wonderfully done with these ceramic glazed wings. They had a few little repairs to them, but they're such a rare form. In the late 19th, early 20th century, most likely, late Qing to Republic period. Here's the underside of them. And you can see that one of them had a break on the end, but it's been reattached. But still, $250 for these. Very rare. And this gets back to one of the things we've talked about before, was that sometimes when things turn up in the market that aren't instantly comparable to something else that is sold. In other words, you see something, you go look it up on different websites to see what they've sold for in the past. If you can't find it, there's a tendency for collectors, or mainly people interested in the monetary side of it, really, and not really collectors, but people are buy Chinese art to sort of speculate on value. If they can't find it, then they don't go near it and they don't bid on it. So unusual forms sometimes just automatically eliminate all the speculators because they're not going to find a comp. All right. So if they can't find a comp, they move on, and they don't understand that what they're looking at is very, very unusual and rare. And it's the kind of thing that I'm always thinking about as interesting. I didn't bid on them just because it's not something I have a place for and I really want to use. And they aren't precisely the kind of things I buy. But had I wanted them, I probably would have left $700 or $800 on them. Because I thought they were pretty terrific things, and I would have gotten them by all indications. They only had 15 people watching it. They got a handful of bids, and that was the end of it. But at any rate, you see something that's rare and unusual or very atypical. Those are the fun things to collect. Those are my thoughts on it. Buy things that are unusual. Don't buy things that are fakes that are unusual. You got to sort of learn the difference. But there's some awfully interesting pieces out there that turn up in the market now and again that are not particularly recognizable, but are clearly early and old, and they have some merit. So always keep that in mind. It's an important thing to do. Now, over to a sale that's coming up. As you know, in the past, Brunks down in Nashville, we just talked about them in the Americana sale. They've had some good Chinese things go through there. They've had some very nice estates of Chinese art. And I was kind of wondering because they hadn't had anything really interesting for a while. And suddenly, bang, they came up with this, the Whitley collection. This is a very big Chinese export armorial porcelain collection. I threw in a piece of furniture here, by the way. That's not a piece of Chinese furniture, but it's an English Chippendale style desk that I thought was so wonderful I had to include it. A Chinese Chippendale. Take a look at that thing. It's absolutely beautiful, and the estimate is for nothing on it. But there's a large number very fine armorial wares and other export wares in the sale, like these giant Wanli bowls. There's a Shenzhen period charger in here that's quite unusual. We're going to take a look at in a minute, and a whole bunch of pieces. This is a very nice looking auction. And one of the things I do like the way the Brunks does it is that they include, with most of their photographs of porcelains, they include blacklighted examples of photographs so you can see if there's been any repairs to it or anything like that. And if you know how to look at blacklighted images, you'll be able to spot them. Sometimes if you'll see little white spots on there in the blacklight. Well, I'll show you one in a minute, and we'll explain what you're seeing. But before we get into it too much, I want to start with one of the lots that's in this sale. It's this. This is one of the holy grails of Chinese export wares. It's a very unusual. It's known as the Jewish lady. The Jewish man and a Jewish lady. These were done at the sort of toward the end of the Yongchen period. This figure, some of you will say, I've seen that figure before. Yeah, they have used this particular ceramic model, these are the few known examples, on the covers of reference books, catalogs, and all kinds of things. You've seen it before. This is one of the real ones. It's about 17 inches tall. It's a big piece of porcelain. It looks to be in wonderful condition. Let's see if we can go through here and go over to where, if they have the blacklight images on this, and I'll show you. Okay, there's the bottom of it. It had been through Christie's. They refer to her as Lady Duff sometimes. At any rate, keep going. Maybe they didn't. There's some old. No blacklighted images on this one, but anyway, it looks to be in very, very good condition. It's got an estimate of $10,000 to $20,000, which I think is remarkably cheap for this. This is one of the rarest and most desirable forms of China trade figural porcelains that was ever produced, and there's an extensive write-up on the history of these, who's had them in the past, who's exhibited them in the past, the Christie's sales that have had them. David Howard and John Ayers' book illustrated them and so forth. Very unusual. If you're a China trade collector, you definitely want to look at that. It's a great thing. And then over to this. This was that, it looks like a Wanli dish. It's actually Shenzhen period, slightly after Wanli, the next period out. This is it. And you'll notice similarities. Here you see there's aspects to it that remind you of typical Wanli export wares. And then there are aspects of this that remind you of your transitional and early Kangxi wares. And this is from the Chongsheng period. And here you have the pair of deer in a wooded landscape with bees and pine trees coming up over their heads. But notice the radiating panels, the lappets going out on the sides, how they're in shaped roux head formed cartouches inches this time around, with fish scale outer borders, also with ruby heads in them. It's a very interesting and very, very rare type of plate. You don't see a lot of stuff from this period. The estimate is for nothing, $300 to $500. This is an 11.5-inch wide dish. It looks to be in quite good condition. Okay, here's one of the blacklighted photos. And what you see here is maybe a small repair on the rim up here. Now, sometimes you see little white spots in the middle here and here. Those aren't repairs typically. Typically what those are just bits of dirt and debris, or maybe adhesive or something that's still on there that was there before. But repairs are quite noticeable and so forth. Here you have, looks like maybe a hairline. Looks like a hairline was cleaned up there and so forth. And you want to go over it, and you can write and get more definitive information on it from Brunks. But it's a very rare type of porcelain, very rare pattern, very rare period, and it's estimated just $300 to $500 with a $150 bid. It's got 12 watchers on it, and this sale is taking place, by the way, on the 29th. And so forth. These are already over on the Patreon and global pages, on the global member pages, so you can check it out. And then they also have this, a cornerless prong dame with the parasol dish. This is one of the most famous cornerless prong patterns that he ever did. It was done in blue and white. It was done in different shades of enamels and so forth. And here you have this one, very nicely done. It's not a Japanese example. Those of you who may not know this, but the Japanese made copies of cornerless prong wares, and they periodically get sold as Chinese examples. If you're a collector of them, you know the difference. But if you don't, be very, very careful, because there are Japanese versions of this pattern that turn up from time to time. They're very nicely done, but they don't have the same value as the Chinese examples. They're later copies that were done by the potters in Arita. But anyway, this is a nice example, a $300 to $500 estimate, which is right on the money. It should probably bring more than that, probably $600 or $700. But you don't know these days. Prices are crazy. All right, and then over here to this, a very nice pair of Kangxi period garlic neck sort of guglets. These are quite lovely. They are pretty close to being a pair, a true pair, but they're not quite. If you look at them, the basic primary design is very, very similar, but you'll notice that the band on the collar around the neck here is positioned slightly lower on the one on the left than the one on the right. The vine creeps up further on the one on the right than the one on the left, and it has a different border on the bottom. The one on the right has sort of a banded, like a tooth border going around it, or cloud border, and the one on the left has just a simple blue and white line. But they sell these as basically assembled pairs, because you don't often find true pairs of these in the market. These are very, very nice. They were no doubt made at about the same time, and the estimate on them is very reasonable: $600 to $900, $300 starting price. They measure 8 3/4 inches, 8 5/8 inches, just about 8 3/4 inches tall. They should bring somewhere between $800 and $1,300. They should easily get up to the $900 mark, the high estimate, because one of them is worth $500 or $600 in my mind. So they should get there. They appear to be in good shape. As always, on all ceramics, you always want to get a condition report in addition to looking at blacklit photos. But the blacklit photos will help you save time. You may see some huge repair on something and go, "Oh, I don't want that." Some people don't mind repairs. Repairs don't bother me at all if the piece is interesting and unusual, and I find evocative enough. I've said it 100 times on here, I'd rather have a piece that's had a repair or a minor accident in its lifetime that's fascinating to look at than something that's perfect and very typical. Perfect and very typical don't interest me in any way in most cases, and that's just the way I am. Some people may like to see the well-known, have collections of the well-known types, and that's a different type of collecting. All right, now over to this. There's also the transitional period bottle vase. This is a rather big one. It's 15.5 inches tall, and it's got an estimate for nothing on it of just $500 to $700. I'm not quite sure why. See if they threw a blacklighted photo in with this. Seems to be a line around the neck, something there. Okay, there it is. Okay, that's why. It's had a repair on the neck. Okay, that's why they gave it such a low estimate. still too low for what it is. If this vase were perfect, it would bring somewhere probably in this size, because it's unusually big. It would probably bring somewhere between $8 or $9 and $12,000. It has a repaired neck. I think it should still bring probably $1,500 to $2,500 anyway. But if you've always wanted one of these, this is a good way to get one. If you don't want to spend $8 or $10 or $15,000, you could buy this one and just say, okay, the restoration, it's got a restored neck, but it's all there. Is a good way to collect. This is a nice looking example. I like the umbrella over the man. I like the colors. The artwork is quite good on it, and the estimate is very low. Now it's up to 23 watchers already. It'll probably do pretty well, but if it goes for 1,500, 2,500, even 3,000, it's a fair buy. All right, and then this great big Wanli porcelain crackware bowl. It's 14 and 7/8 inches in diameter, which is just a tiny bit short of 15 inches. Nice big bowl. These bowls turn up once in a while. Typically they turn up over in the Netherlands more often because they got so much of this stuff brought into them. But this is a nice example. What I always love about these big bowls is that they're so uneven. They look like they were warped. And it's just because when they were potting them and throwing them, they tended to sag one way or the other in the kilns. It was just a problem they had with these large bowls because of the weight and the shape, and they would deform slightly in the kilns. Very typical. If you ever find one that's perfect and completely round, be suspicious that it isn't a copy. All right. If it's absolutely perfect, it's probably a reproduction, because the old ones nearly always have these warps in them, especially when they get big, over 10, 12 inches. The bigger they get, the greater the warp gets. And this one isn't actually that bad. It doesn't tilt too much. Sort of rises up in the middle and goes down. But I like the bowl. I've always liked these big bowls. They're fun to have in a house. There you can get a real look at the distortion of the piece. I love that. Very wanky. And here's the interior, though. The interior of this bowl is beautiful. Better than most, especially the bird and landscape scene on the water here in the center with the peonies. This is very, very delightfully done, and the plants coming up, making up the border decorations, very unusual. This is a lovely bowl, and big bowls are always great to have. You put them in the middle of a table, throw some fruit in them, and have something nice to look at while you're entertaining your guests. The estimate on it is a bit on the low side, I think. In the past, we've seen these; they typically sell for $2,000 to $3,000, $3,500. This one looks like a particularly good one, so I wouldn't be surprised if it went over that. But right now, it only has 2 bidders watching it, so maybe it'll go for a bargain. Again, come over and leave $1,200, $1,300 on it, and see if you don't get it. You might. Leave a bid, for heaven's sakes. All right, and then along to this nice Kangxi period jar. Looks quite good. Notice how big the roux head is here. Very, very gutsy, large-scale roux heads. When I first saw this, the color blue seemed almost a little too electric to me, and I was kind of wondering if it was a later 18th example or what it was. And then it's got a hairline on the inside, and I went around it and looked at the bottom. I thought, no, it's a Kangxi pot. And the close-up pictures look much better. There you have it. That very rich, super sapphire sort of blue tone that everybody loves so much. There it is. And this is a pretty good sized jar. It measures 14 inches in height. It's got a modest estimate of $600 to $900. I suspect it'll go for probably $1,200 to $1,800. It'll go over that. $300 starting bid. And from what I can tell, the best I can tell, these pieces are not being sold with much of, if any, reserved. They don't appear to be reserved because the estimates are so low. Usually when you see very, very low estimates, it's the auctioneer's way of telling you these pieces are they're going to be sold no matter what. So you want to go over and leave a bid. And then this is something very, very nice. It's a Chinese export armorial ware for the German market. But the artwork on this is outstanding. Many of you know I always gravitate to this quality of blue and white decoration. This is as fine a blue and white decoration as was done anywhere in China for any market, whether it's for the emperor or for export market. This quality of blue and white, 18th century, 1750, 60, somewhere in there, is superb. And for a lot of reasons. One is the fineness of the decoration. If you look at the border decorations, and then you pull it in here, and you look at the details of the boat, the clouds coming down over this pagoda, the willow trees blowing, and then you come and look at the border decoration here. Down here, this crisscross border, extraordinarily fine work. And you have to remember, this wasn't printed on. Each one of these little designs was done and outlined by hand. There was no mechanical assistance in doing this. How they did it, to me, is just a marvel. And there's the back of it. It was sold apparently by, again, Henry Moog. You keep running into him because a lot of Southern collections are getting cleared out. There's the front of it. No blacklight. There's no damage to this at all, or no repairs anywhere. I don't know if that's a reflection or a hairline. It's probably a reflection because there's a big one over on that side. But these little white bits in the middle, again, with black lights, those are just bits of tape and residue typically that's left behind from being in collections and whatnot. But this is an exceptionally pretty plate. Exceptionally pretty, and it almost has minimalist looking elements to it. They look like the artist intentionally scaled them down to give a greater sense of space. Just a great, I won't go on about it too much more, but I just obviously like this a great deal. It's 15 and 1/8 inch in diameter. It's a charger, and it should bring $600 to $900 all day long. But we'll come back and we'll revisit and see how they do. And then also in the sale are some very good books, and this is, of course, is the Howard a book on Chinese armorial wares, volumes 1, volume 2. These have turned up. A number of these sets have turned up in the last few months. They always bring $600 to $800, $900. The estimate is therefore $600 to $900 on these. It's got 6 bidders watching it. If you've been putting off buying these, I would urge you to buy a set for yourself if you collect these wares. Mr. Howard is an outstanding writer. He does impeccable research, and this is a thick book. This book's like a big like an Oxford dictionary. It's a very good book, well illustrated. So do think about leaving a bid on that. And then the other books in the sale is this. This is the 3-volume set of the Topkapi Sarre Museum collection that was published. It was done by John Ayres and Regina Crowell years ago. And it was a Sotheby's publication from 1986. Remember we talked about Sotheby's publishing books in the video earlier this week. This is the kind of stuff they were publishing, and I haven't seen them do much of this lately. This was an outstanding series. It's highly collected. Everybody wanted this series at the time because of the mystique and the magic of the items in the Topkapi Museum in Istanbul. And you have Regina Crowell and John Ayres doing the writing on it, which is about as good as it gets. There's the cover of it. There's some extraordinary pieces in there, numbered editions and all that, because these were a limited edition series. But absolutely worth owning if you collect early porcelain, Ming porcelain, Yuan porcelain, all that, right into the Qing Dynasty. There are examples in here from the Qing Dynasty as well. But it's a very, very good series of books. And the next one is this. This is 27 reference books, Chinese export porcelain. And one of them is the big book on Famille Rose here in the middle. And then it was published by Tuttle. And then down here you have the Hatcher Cargo, porcelain from the Dutch China trade. And then this terrific book down here from the Rijksmuseum, Chinese ceramics in the collection of the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. That's a very, very, very good book. I had the pleasure of meeting the guy that wrote that book years ago. He came to Salem to visit the PBD Essex and Bill Sargent and Crosby Forbes and everybody. And they brought him up to Essex for lunch. And he came in and he looked at a few things around the store. He was very, very nice man. And we had a good visit. But at any rate, he's a brilliant guy. This book alone is worth $75 or $100. And the lot is estimated at just $100 to $500. But I think, $300 or $400 should buy it. It's a good set, 27 books all in one bite. All right, and then along over to this. This is something else that's in the sale. It's a nice big Kangxi Femivair charger with sort of an unusual scene in the middle of precious objects or objects on a patio and potted plants. And these planters with little small bamboo trees growing up and rocks and so forth. And then sort of a walled roof around here, a deer in the garden underneath a little gazebo and so forth. Very unusual pattern, and I like the border a lot. It's interlocking cartouches with blossoming and flowers on it, but the scale of them is slightly compressed, which I think is very attractive. And there's another shot of it, so on. And I don't think it's got a hairline in it. I see a hairline up here in the corner. But other than that, it looks fine. But it's an unusual one. It's got a very modest estimate, $200 to $400. Like I said, it's 15 1/8 inch in diameter. Go hit that thing for a bid of $300 or $400. You might just get it. I'll be surprised if it goes for below the estimate, but it might. So hit it for a bid. That's a nice Kangxi plate with an unusual pattern and decoration on it. It's very unusual. And then heading along over to this is one of these Hongxi Ming export plates. This is they have 2 sales coming up. This is the second day, but it's a nice example. It's absolutely Ming with the phoenix in the middle of it. Those of you that have handled a lot of Ming wares know right away this is perfectly fine. Looks good all the way around. It's 12 inches in diameter, which is about the right size. And the estimate is fine. $500 to $700, $250 opening bid. We've seen these in the recent past, and they sell for anywhere on the low side for a 9 or 10 inch one for $300 or $400, and the 12 inch and bigger ones sell for anywhere from $500 to $700. So I think in this case the estimate is pretty much right on the money. We'll see, but it's very, very pretty. It's very, very nice example. It's very rustic. It has a great rustic feel to it, considering the period when it was made, because it was made at the end of the 15th century. And then over to this. Now they have these, I think they've misdated these a little bit. They list these as late 19th century, and I think they're probably first half of the 19th century, judging by the shading and the coloration and how they were done. And on paper, these are not pith paintings, these are on paper. Very, very nicely done of ladies outside. One of them was playing a flute and so forth, or some sort of instrument rather. What has she got here? Whoops. It's like a cymbal. Oh, she's tapping on a little cymbal, it looks like. I thought I thought she was holding up a flute. My mistake. All right, there it is. But wonderful pictures, estimated just $300 to $500. There's 2 of them in here, all framed and ready to go. They measure 22 inches in height, 22 and just almost 23 inches tall, almost 22 by 17. So they're pretty good size. So that's a good size picture. For what, $300 to $500. That seems remarkably reasonable, and so take a look at those. We also added to the global pages this week. There's a number of Bonham sales that are online right now. I want to mention that, and I'm going to do a quick video on it in a day or two because I want to go through it because it's like 3 days worth of sales. This is a London sale. Some interesting things, and also Sotheby's is having a series of sales. We got to get a video done on this too. They come in waves, don't they? There's 3 sales, 3 particularly interesting sales that are coming up in Hong Kong on the 29th. So maybe we'll do this one first. And there's this is the let's see, the Sakamoto Goro selection, selection 1. And it's just some very early, very rare pieces in here. They're coming up with clever names for these. But it's these are all these sort of boutique sales, I call them. There's only 37 lots on the sale, but very, very nice items. And one of them, of course, is this, the really desirable Yuan Dynasty peony blossom jar. There it is. And we've seen you've all seen these before. They bring vast amounts of money. But this is a very rare one. And it was interesting in the provenance, they didn't mention, other than it was exhibited at the Osaka Museum in Japan, which is one of the great Chinese collections of the world. It was exhibited there back in the 1970s, but there's not much about it since. And there's no mention of prior provenances. And it's obviously an old one. It's obviously fine. It's a great hell of a jar. But for some reason, there's not a lot of provenance on it. Maybe the family has owned it for a century or two. You don't know, and they just want to keep it, privacy, which is an important thing. Nobody wants to get hit over the head in the middle of the night and getting robbed. But anyway, this is a great example, and we'll see what it brings. It's estimated at 6 to 9 million Hong Kong. Or that comes out to about what, 775,000, 800,000 to about $1.2 million. It should bring that. In the past, we've seen these sell for more than that. So I wouldn't be at all surprised to see this sell for 1.8 to 2.5 million, somewhere in there. But they've given it a fair estimate, a reasonable estimate, an encouraging estimate. Let's see what it does. And we're going to come back and take a longer look at this auction. And the other thing that caught my eye in here was this. These are really wonderful. A pair of Wan Li mark and period. They're signed and dated 1611, I believe it was. Lacquered stands. These are very, very nice, very, very desirable. And extremely rare. You're getting a pair of them, and the workmanship on them looks very, very good. And if you're looking at lacquer, this reminds me of something. Somebody asked me the other day, how do these lines form in lacquer? sometimes you see almost straight lines running across it, like you do on the edge here. You see these lines coming out, and how does that come from? And you can see it on the right too, also even more vividly. That is from the wood shrinking. What happens is that over time, the wood that they put the lacquer on, the bodies, they shrink as they dry out. They contract a little bit, and they did tend to try to use dry wood as they could to avoid too much cracking. But there was always a little more cracking to go over the time and history, and also as they've been inside, they absorb moisture and humidity during the summer a bit. They dry out in the winter when the heat's on, hot weather, cold weather, all these changes, and lacquer expands and contracts very, very differently than wood. Lacquer doesn't expand and contract much, so it tends to be resistant. So what happens is the wood shrinks inside, the lacquer's attached to the wood, and it causes cracks to form. And that's it. It isn't from abuse. Somebody asked me if it was from abuse. That was one of the things. And I said, no. It's just from the member that the lacquer is applied to as a body is expanding and contracting over the years. And if this was made in 1611, that's 500 years of expanding and contracting. So you're going to get some crackle to it, which I think is fine. If you didn't see any crackle on this, you should probably run for your life, because it's most likely a high-end copy. The cracks are a good indicator of age, and there are the signatures here and there. All right, but very, very attractive. And then hopping along over this, the Minnehaha sale is also coming up. There's some bronzes, some very good early ceramics going back to the Tang Dynasty, some very nice carvings and so forth. There's an extremely rare mother and pearl inlaid lacquered with a dinosaur box. It's got a giant estimate on it, 12 to 30 million Hong Kong dollars. So that's about 1.5 to almost 4 million. So it's sort of a wide-ranging estimate, but there it is. Spectacular mother of pearl work with this great-looking dragon in the middle. I think he's fantastic. He's got a great personality. Look at his expression on his face. Great expression, but notice the quality of the mother of pearl work on this. This is an extremely, extremely rare example. It was done during the Southern Sung period, and it measures, these are usually not terribly, well, they may be a foot and a half, 39 centimeters, so just a little over a foot and a half wide. But they're not huge like table boxes that are 2-3 feet. These are sort of smallish. It's not small, I suppose, but it's not as big as some of them are. At any rate, and this has got a big estimate, 12 to 30 million Hong Kong. It's an extremely rare type. You're going to have anybody that's interested in buying this is going to have to do some serious digging for comps. I don't know if they even mention any comps down here. They have some provenance. They have some exhibition. No comps. That's one of the things that happens, but. It's undoubtedly the real thing. It's undoubtedly beautiful. And to the person that just loves great art, they're going to have to buy this. This is just a must-have thing. I love the wave border going around the outside, too. There's a real sense of movement here. But I love the face of the dragon. Absolutely love it. So, like I said, 12 to 30 million Hong Kong. We'll see how that does. All right. So there's a lot going on still, even though Asia Week is over and we're sort of heading into the Halloween and Thanksgiving seasons and all that. There are a number of good sales coming up. As I said, there's a good series of sales coming up over at Bonham's. There's something coming up at Christie's, and we're going to try to visit both of them in the next couple of days. All right. One of the things I wanted to mention was there are a few results, things over on eBay last week that did find these are items that haven't closed yet. This one ends in a day or so. Ends on Saturday. Is a very nice Yongchen period teapot with aubergine spout and handle, which is sort of an unusual color palette. It's only up to $202. Usually the saucers for these bring $300 to $400, and the teapots bring another $6 or $7. So it's got a ways to go. But if you leave a bid on it for $400, the way things are these days, you might just get it. So it's worth taking a shot at. And this was something that sold last week that I thought was also, it was on the eBay newsletter page, a very nice ribbed guglet in Famille Rose, 18th century. This is one of these patterns that it was pretty well known. You see them often in European collections and French collections, that sort of thing. And it's interesting because my own mother had an entire tea service of this. And this exact pattern when I was growing up, it was beautifully done with shaped with faceted cups and so forth. At any rate, here's one, $483. $483. I think that was a very, very reasonable buy. We've seen them in the past, in the last few years. Similar examples like these have sold for 600 and 700 and 800. So somebody left a bid and somebody lucked out. All right, so there's a lot going on. And take a look at the video if you missed it on the Sotheby's and Christie's situation and what's going on over there. And check these out. If you're on the Patreon pages, we've already updated it with all of these things, plus the Bonham sale in the UK. So they'll be on the American pages 1 and 2, and then the European pages 2 and 3 on Live Auctioneers. It's worth checking out. There's some good things between the two sales. So if you can't find something there to buy, you're not looking hard enough. There's some good things in there. The other thing I wanted to mention, somebody asked me why is certain, those are, maybe some of you aren't too familiar with what we do, but when we put things on the global member pages and the Patreon pages, we don't just grab everything that's available on Live Auctioneers. We actually look at the lots. We actually look at them and go through them and say, yeah, this is good, this isn't good. And even sometimes with sort of the larger, more reputable auction houses, there are things we do not include because we don't agree with them for whatever reason about age and authenticity. And sometimes and very often we've been right. The piece hasn't sold. There's been a problem later, something like that. We try very, very hard to identify what's there. So you're going to see time periods with a lot of stuff on the Live Auctioneers pages and things that are over on the global pages. And then there are other times where there's not much. And it's not that there isn't a lot of stuff available on Live Auctioneers, but it's all fakes. The fake market in today's world is as hard as it is to believe, has actually gotten worse. I was looking at somebody the other day. It sent me some items to the Dot auction gallery in California, and they are crooks. Period. Misrepresent things, make up provenances. They're sort of like Lauren Galleries and those guys down in Georgia. You understand that if it's not there, it's not that we didn't see it; it's that we didn't believe it, and we don't include things we don't believe. And sometimes we may miss something that's pretty good. May happen. I'm sure it happens. It has to happen. It's a numbers game. But we try really, really hard not to put things on there. So you're going to see the amount of content on there ebb and flow considerably depending on what's available. Not that there aren't thousands of things available on Live Auctioneers. There are always thousands of things available on there. But the percentage of them that are authentic and accurately dated and identified is very small. And that's what we aim to present. So just so you know that, just so you all know that. All right, because I don't say it often enough that's what we do on those pages. We don't just scrim off everything we see and throw it on there for content. Okay, have a good weekend. We'll see you next week. Get your candy for Halloween. The kids will be coming around in a week or two, and take care of them. And see you all soon. Okay, bye-bye.